Everybody.
Hey folks, how y'all doing today?
It's Renee and Todd from Rat Stash, and we are also volunteers of Foxy Cradle. So as you know, we adopted Phantom and Penelope from Foxy Cradle.
We did.
And we are tonight at a zoning meeting. It's a very important meeting. So there is a particular people that are trying to shut down Foxy's Cradle and stop the rescue of the needle intensive care kittens. Complete BS.
Some people are just can't say it on here.
Just want to let you know, we are here. There is a large crowd, and I was asked to be one of the 8 speakers to talk and try to convince this committee that Foxy Cradle is an asset to this community. I'm going to flip it around and show you the back. Well, actually, not flip it around, but I can show you. Look at how full it is. So this meeting was supposed to be last month. This is supposed to be last month. Last month, there were so many people that were coming and bombarded this council that they actually rented out a fire hall to have us all in because the township was not able to get in. Oops, sorry. The township was not able to supply or seat all the people that are coming. So people have come from Philadelphia up here. They've come from other rescues. We have Channel 69 News here. We have the Morning Call, and attorneys are here. So we are all fighting really hard to keep this rescue alive and well and keep running because the kittens need it.
They do.
They didn't deserve to be brought into the world, and they don't deserve to suffer.
Nope.
And if they are shut down, they will suffer horribly. So
Exactly.
So keep watching because it might get heated.
Might.
I don't know. I have a really nice speech written, but also just want to know, my mom loved animals. My mom has a whole colony feral cats at her home, and she took care of them. And I know up in heaven right now, my mom, Sneaky Pete, high heels, green eyes, they're all sitting up there and they're all waiting to hear what happens. They actually probably already know what's going to happen, and they might be just laughing at all of us being nervous. I don't know, but say a little prayer and keep us in your thoughts and wish us well for tonight.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's go, Foxy. Okay.
Yep.
They had said that they have 12, they can only operate 6 at any given time, and then they keep one litter together, and forgive me if I'm remembering that incorrectly, that each litter would house, each incubator had one litter of kittens together. That way nothing gets spread or there's any question on diseases, things of that nature. We talked about the volunteers that they have. They did indicate that most of the care and day-to-day operations are conducted by Candace with Cheryl's assistant and volunteers as they're available. I asked a little bit more about the procedure once the kittens are out of the incubators. They said that they do have a volunteer and a foster network that will take, once they get their bill of health, they'll take the cats to the foster homes. If there's any type of a meet and greet or an adoption event, then those cats are transported back to the residents, along with any additional, if there's veterinary care, things that are needed where if the volunteers are not able to take them to the vet directly, then they'll be brought back to the residents and they'll handle that transport.
In terms of the information that they shared, did they give you a better sense than what you were able to publicly glean as to the scope of the operation?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm looking at just at Facebook pictures or reading an article about it. So I tried to wrap my head around how the house was laid out and just a better idea of the foot traffic coming in and how it works every day.
Okay. What, if anything, did they tell you about how much of the property they used? In other words, were you getting the sense that this was an operation where they use like a small part of one room, or does it encompass a lot of the property?
She was fairly open about that. She had indicated that The incubators are there, those are in one room. They have a play area where they handle some of the adoption events and a meet and greet type of area. Storage of the various products that are donated are also kept on site.
Okay. And you mentioned volunteers. What, if anything, did Candace tell you about the quantity or scope of volunteers that visit the property as part of this operation?
It varies based on their availability. The schedules that were provided had things such as transport, coming out and cleaning, feeding schedules. There were some days where those vacancies were filled and there were names of various volunteers. But for the most part, it looked like Candace was doing quite a bit of it along with her mother coming over.
And do your notes reflect what the property owner and Candace told you about what they were doing at the property?
Can you clarify, please?
Yeah, so do you have some notes on the first page of Exhibit 5 under this section of discussion?
Okay.
Is that information that was you learned independently through research, or is that information that they told you?
No, that was from them. That was information that was discussed at the meeting based upon the information that they provided. The pictures that I had found online that I clarified what I was looking at and where. That reflects the conversation itself.
Yeah, and what, if anything, did they tell you about events and fundraisers at the property and how the property would be used for that?
So most of the fundraisers are conducted on site. They range from small events, various things, people coming, picking up wares that were sold. Other times they do have people coming to the property. They had mentioned a spaghetti dinner that can garner, she said at times upwards of 150 people. They did specify not at one time. They do have shifts. They do have volunteers that come to the property that handle directing traffic, parking, things of that nature.
Clarify a point to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. So, with regard to violation number 1, okay, there's A, B, and C.
Correct.
Okay, so C is you need a use and occupancy permit, and that pertains to they would need some type of permit to have this use. Be it a variance for a kennel, the request we made, an interpretation that's permitted. So C is I will say the primary issue at hand.
For use itself, there would actually be 2 separate documents, if you will, issued.
Okay.
First being a zoning permit, permitting the use. You know, it's okay to use as a kennel based on XYZ parameters. The use and occupancy permit, for residents, it would be it received final inspections. For a commercial use, it would have been, again, inspected according to whatever the building codes apply to that particular type of use.
Okay, so we wouldn't get to C unless we could, unless we obtained zoning approval for the proposed use that's operating. We wouldn't get to be able to get the use and occupancy because we have to get the zoning permit first. Is that
That's
correct?
accurate.
Okay. So in violation 1, we are requesting zoning relief. That would, if it were granted, we could get the zoning permit.
Correct.
Then you would come at some point and there'd be a use and occupancy inspection, like you indicated, that would allow us to get that permit once we knew the use was permitted?
Correct.
Okay. And then B, did I understand correctly that they've applied for and they've corrected that 1B at this point as far as they could?
As far as they could, correct.
Okay, and again, to the extent some of those items would be related to a use that they don't yet have, or unfortunately, depending upon the board's decision, may or may not have to get. They've gone as far as they can at this point until the use issue is decided?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Can you tell me, if I were a owner of a home in North Whitehall Township, and I happen to support a particular, let's say, political candidate, could I host a fundraiser for that candidate at my home?
You can host the fundraiser, however, if it is open to the public, there are additional permits that are required for erecting, say, a big tent.
Okay.
So there are additional permits, which, as you rightfully said, would not be granted because they pertain to a use that has not been approved.
Okay. Yeah, so there is a procedure for a homeowner to have a fence at his home, his or her home, that might draw 100 people under certain circumstances, correct?
Even if you wanted to hold a wedding, for example, at your house, you would still need a permit for the tent because it would be occupied by somebody other than what was in the household. A birthday party, you're talking about a standard party? No, if you're talking about erecting something that's going to house a large number of people, then there will be permits required.
Okay, so it's really the erection of the structure, the tent structure, that triggers the issue?
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
And the public foot traffic. And again, that's pertaining, I'm talking specifically to the tent because I know those are utilized quite a bit. And in building code, UCC code, anything that is open to the public would require permanent inspection.
Now, and again, just to, I want to clarify what is encompassed by the violation. For example, I think you mentioned there were some aspects where it didn't look like, I think you used the word normal house. Do you remember using that?
I do.
Okay. If I were not operating an operation open to the public, could I post rules in my living room?
For sure. As a parent, I certainly had a myriad of them for my daughter when she was at that age, so.
And I could have 2 washing machines, I presume, if I wanted to. Okay, so am I correct that it not looking like a normal house on the interior isn't one of the criteria, for example, for a home occupation?
No, that is correct, but there are limitations on home occupation as to the amount of a home you can use when you have a home occupation. You're
Sure,
limited.
it's 25%.
Correct.
So, if it were determined that a particular use qualifies, and some question for the board, I'm not asking you that it qualifies, we agree then that you'd be permitted to use 25% of your home based upon the zoning ordinance?
Correct.
Okay. Can I ask, is, in your analysis, if I were to say to you, I keep 12 dogs at my property, does that then trigger the kennel provision the way it's written? In other words, what's the trigger here that makes this, in your opinion, a kennel? Is it the number of animals exceeding a number in the ordinance?
Well, the definition itself talks about nonprofit animal shelters. So that's where we automatically go by their definition, that's what they have.
Okay.
It's an animal rescue, an animal shelter.
Right.
That is going to automatically take it into the kennel because it's in that definition. For zoning, for code enforcement, it's a black and white issue. If the ordinance says A, B, and C, I can't look at it any other way.
Okay, so then let's look at that.
Sure.
Can you read for me, I think it was in your exhibits, the definition of kennel?
So I'm looking at exhibit number 6. Kennel, the keeping of a greater number of dogs and or cats than are permitted under the keeping of pets or crop farming provisions of this chapter. A kennel may also serve other animals. A nonprofit animal shelter is a definition of kennel, or
Okay.
type of kennel, I apologize.
And then can you turn to the section of your ordinance that defines the keeping pets, I think it's pets, comma, keeping of.
Do you mind if I ask Director Maurer for our copy of the ordinance?
Right now. sub 12.
Okay, so you're going to the additional requirements, then not the definition, 'cause that's a whole different
Right,
section. I
I'm
just wanna
just
make
going
sure
to
I'm
that section.
following
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Because your definition of kennel refers you to that are permitted under the keeping of pets section. And the keeping of pets section is 440-42, sub 12.
Right, for the board, it's on page 440, 160.
Find it. Yeah, can you just look at C2 then? And what does C2 say?
These numerical restrictions shall not apply to cats and dogs of less than 3 months of age, although commercial breeding shall only be permitted as an accessory use to a dwelling under the general home occupation regulations.
Okay, so, kennel has, the definition of kennel has 3 sentences. Would you agree that they need to be read as the single definition of kennel?
I do not. Given that the final line specifies a nonprofit animal shelter is a type of kennel. It doesn't say and or, so there are individual components.
Okay, so your position is that the nonprofit animal shelter, no matter what it is, because it's nonprofit, it then falls under the definition of kennel.
Correct.
Okay. So a for-profit animal shelter, where's that regulated?
It would also be under the kennel use.
I don't understand
Well, for profit, they're not gonna be your personal pets.
that.
So,
But they could be a home occupation, right? You don't have to, a home occupation doesn't turn on whether something is nonprofit or profit, is that correct?
a home occupation, if you're talking about breeding of animals,
I'm talking about just a home occupation generally. Because what we've decided now is there's nothing, if they were to make this a profit, it wouldn't be covered by the literal definition of kennel, correct? Because for some reason it says a nonprofit animal shelter.
I object, he's characterizing her testimony.
Well, I'm just asking her, because the word a nonprofit, I'm trying to figure out why this is a kennel. I'm delving into that section.
I object to the extent it calls for legal conclusion. She's read through the ordinance.
Well, she issued the notice of violation. If she can answer why she did that.
The ordinance is what it is. She's already testified as to what it says and the facts as to what she observed. Trying to get in an argument back and forth with her as to what the applicant would like the definition to say, as opposed to what it actually says.
I'm not trying to get into
It's
an argument about
It's
it.
argumentative and asking the witness for a legal conclusion, which we object to.
I'm asking, I think this is clear. What you're saying is, it's simply the last third sentence, a nonprofit animal shelter is a type of kennel. That's the reason you issued the notice of violation. Just wanted to put,
Object again, it's been asked and answered, she's already testified to it, and it's a legal conclusion.
Wait, the board has to consider the objection.
The objection is twofold, I mean, it provides the question, the objection is twofold. One, it's been asked and answered, he's already asked you to read the definition, and she's read it 2 or 3 times at this point. The second is that it's asking for a legal conclusion. She's already testified that based on the definition, which is what it is, that she issued a notice violation due to the violation of the definition in the zoning ordinance. Now he's asking her if it should be something else, or what her legal opinion of it is. I don't know.
well, all I'd like her to do is explain exactly the violation. And if her answer is, I believe it's a kennel, I can't change it, I'm not trying to put words in her mouth. I was just asking.
I think she's testified.
It is a kennel.
I think she's testified 3 times that the applicant admitted it's a kennel, it's a nonprofit animal shelter,
They admitted it's a nonprofit animal shelter.
which is in the definition.
Okay.
I don't know what else you want to, kind of read the definition
So the complaint, as it was relayed to me, and taking for what it is, this is from the complainant to me directly. I did not receive copies of police reports. I don't have anything beyond just what was relayed to me. The party that complained indicated that it was after dark, they were sitting in their living room watching TV, their front door was opened by a man unknown to them, identifying themselves as being there looking for the animal rescue to drop them off. This party directed them where they needed to go, that person left without incident and prompted the call to me.
Just lock your damn door.
You testified that some building permits were issued for the house?
Correct.
5260.
Yes.
Okay. And the township had some of this information, but is A1, the certificate of registration, it's a registered nonprofit, correct?
Yes, it is.
And roughly when did Foxy's Cradle begin to operate on the property?
21.
You have to answer to the best of your knowledge. If you don't- And the township indicated that in late 20, early 21, Mr. Mauer did come out to the property, is that correct? Okay, and did he speak to it?
Yes.
And was his testimony consistent with, you told him?
Yes.
Okay, to talk to him? Yeah. Yeah, so Foxy's Cradle started in late 20, which is consistent with Mr. Mauer coming out in December of 20, is that,
Yes.
or January 21, correct? Okay. And can you just tell us the conversation you had with Mr.
I
Mauer?
went out on the front porch and he was basically asking me if Foxy's Cradle was in the house next door with my daughter, yes. He was asking me other questions and then I referred over to him.
Okay, so you and he have similar recollections as to the
Basically,
conversation?
yeah, it was very easy, it was very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, did you speak with anyone from the township, in the rest of 2021?
Nothing,
In 2022?
nothing.
Okay. Did you at some point then, attend a meeting with the township?
Yes, it was in
Okay, so you met in April, like, Ms. Miller indicated? Okay. And, we have, indicated that at that time, you supplied kind of a summary to the township of what Foxy's Cradle was, you and your daughter did? Okay.
all the insurance records and everything.
Okay.
No, because like I said, when Jeff was out, it was kind of very vague and
It's fair to say when
didn't say anything.
when Foxy's Cradle was first setting up in property next to the one where you live in 5260, I mean, your daughter did that with your knowledge and consent. She didn't do it without you knowing about it, correct?
Yeah, but it wasn't so small. I mean, you take little tiny babies that were like ounces. It's not like we have. So it was very small. I did not realize that we needed anything to, any paperwork.
I understand. And you indicated that when that business was started, you did file appropriate papers with the state to form it as an entity, a business entity, is that
All
correct?
paperwork, you have all liability insurance, everything is in.
Okay, so you knew your daughter was establishing a business entity at one of your properties, is that correct? Okay. Isn't it true that when you established other business entities at your property, you did disclose it to the township and seek the appropriate approvals?
Well, when I did my flower shop at home, yes.
Okay, so when you put a flower shop in one of your properties, you sought the approvals, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay, and when you had a salon in your basement, you also sought the approvals, is that
yeah,
correct?
that was 40 years ago.
Okay, But you didn't do that when you let your daughter set up a business in one of your properties this time, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And then, just for the timing, what is your testimony as to when Foxy's Cradle started operating in 5260 Overlook?
It was September of 21.
Okay. Do you have the exhibit and binder in front of you, ma'am?
Yeah, I think she did,
It's 20.
yeah. She corrected herself afterwards.
September.
20,
Okay.
2020.
Without belaboring it, if there's a news article from May of 2020 that talks about Foxy's Cradle operating at one of your properties, will that refresh your recollection as to when it was operating?
It was very small. I mean, when that news article came out, we had no volunteers, we didn't have anything.
All right, I have no further questions. Thanks.
Or caring for it.
Yeah, sure. 3 months is actually a pretty critical time for them. They start, as you see in the pictures, the newborns. Their eyes are closed, you can see their ears are flush. That one picture actually shows the preemie, the bottom middle, you can tell because it's bald on its paws, its nose, and its ears. So they're completely dependent on us. So the first stage in caring for them is we have to bottle feed them every 2 hours. The preemie would get fed every 60 to 90 minutes, around the clock. They cannot go to the bathroom on their own, so our caretakers, we have to stimulate them to go to the bathroom or else they'll die. So we have to maintain their heat, we have to maintain their feeding schedule. If we get off schedule at all, they'll turn hypoglycemic and they'll fade. So it's critical to feed them by schedule. We actually have a chart in the nursery that helps guide volunteers, so you can see based on their body weight and their age, how much in a 24-hour period they have to ingest formula, or else they're never gonna grow properly, they're gonna fade, and they're gonna die. So that's the first step in these guys. They're generally in an incubator until about 3 or 4 weeks old, sometimes a little longer, depending how they develop. Bottle baby kittens, they develop at a slower rate because they're not with their moms. They don't have antibodies, and they grow slower than they would when they're with their mom. So the older they get, the more they'll eat, just like a regular human baby, but the less often we have to feed them. So as they grow, they'll consume more, and then our feeding schedule increases every 3 hours. Every 4 hours. Once they reach the every 4-hour mark, that's usually when they're starting to get teeth in. At that point, their eyes are definitely open. They have other senses that think about. They can maintain their body temperature. When we introduce food to them, it's like a gruel. I call it slop. But it's pate wet food that we mix with formula, and it makes like like a soup consistency. And that's their first introduction to solid food. That generally happens around the 4-week mark. As soon as they're in an incubator and they're consuming slop on their own consistently, they're still growing at a decent, consistent rate, we start decreasing their incubator temperature. So we decrease it about 1 degree per day until they're down to room temperature. If you take them out too soon, it can cause shock, and then you have all kinds of issues health-wise with them. So we very slowly bring them down in temperature. When they're newborns, their incubators run at 100 degrees. Preemies are usually 101 to 102. So we bring them down to 75 degrees then, and once they're stable and everything's going well, when they're at the 75-degree mark, they're eating on their own, we take them and we put them in what we call a borderline kennel, a crate. And we continue to monitor them at that point really close to make sure their body temperature doesn't fluctuate and make sure there's no struggling that comes out at that point. Once they're at room temperature for a while, we'll introduce baby cat, which is a real tiny dry food. Usually they pick it up right away, and then that's the first step in weaning is done. If they eat dry food, they drink water on their own, and they eat wet food on their own. Once they're stabilized to that degree, then we'll consider, as long as there's no medical issues, we'll consider transferring them out to a foster. If they still have medical concerns, there's anything the vet's watching, or a person on our volunteer team is watching, we'll keep them in nursery a little longer to monitor, just to make sure everything is healthy and strong, not that we go transferring them out prematurely and then we have all kinds of issues. Let's say everything goes well, we transfer them to a foster home. They will take over raising them, pretty much an independent foster will take over raising them, and until they reach that 3-month mark. Of course, from the time they're weaned and transferred out, from the time they reach the 3-month mark, they'll have vaccines, they'll have at least one vet visit in the meantime, as long as there's no other concerns to address. When they reach that 3-month mark, that's when they'll be due for their 3rd distemper vaccine. And the reason why the 3-month mark is so critical is because that's when the state of Pennsylvania the rabies vaccine becomes valid in the state of Pennsylvania when a kitten is 3 pounds or 3 months old. The way our rescue works, I'm very strict with that. I will not, under any condition, adopt out a kitten that is not vaccinated against rabies, does not have 3 distemper vaccines under its belt, because I've seen too many kittens die from distemper. And I will not, under any condition, allow a kitten to leave my rescue if it is not neutered.
So, if you look at A6, is A6,
Takes through the night is because the critical nature of the kittens we serve. They're completely dependent on our care and getting care to them immediately. The longer it goes without caring for them, the higher their risk of death. Because they can't regulate body temperature. So if you find them out in the yard and it's 8 o'clock at night, if you hold on to that kitten until 8 o'clock the next morning when other rescues open, that kitten's going to be dead by morning. Because the general public doesn't know about bottle feeding and how to keep it warm, and they lack the knowledge of care for the little guys. So if they reach out to other rescues, most other rescues will refer their intake calls of neonates to us, because they know we do take calls 24/7. So taking overnight calls is critical to their survival. It's imperative to what we do as a rescue. We try, if we get a kitten call and we know that it's safe, and the person that found it is willing to do their best to feed it, to keep it warm, we will work with that person and instruct them on what to do overnight to avoid overnight intakes. And then we usually bring them in the morning or the next day when it's convenient around their work schedule, as long as we know they're cared for and they're not going to suffer. If they have no ability, they don't have finances to go and pick up formula, or they have dogs that they can't bring in inside, if the kitten's life is at risk, waiting until morning, we will make an exception and allow an overnight drop-off. Overnight drop-offs during the summer usually start 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. I do a no contact. And again, that's because I'm a private person, and come 8 o'clock, I'm in my jammies, honestly, so I don't really want people coming in off the streets handing me a kitten. But I still want to provide care to them. And it's also a safety thing, because I live in the house by myself with my son, so I don't want just random people coming to the door like that. So what we do for the overnight intakes, I give the finder instructions ahead of time. The instructions would be to text me when they're about 5 minutes outside of the address. At that point, I will put a heated carrier on the table on the front porch. Make sure the outside lights are on and everything for them. We have a surrender form that they have to complete, and that basically gives us legal ability to get vet care for that kitten and to take ownership of this kitten from the person that found it. So we put that form on a clipboard on top of the carrier on the front porch table, the heated carrier. When they arrive, they walk up to the front door, they transfer the kitten from however they're carrying it and put it in the secured heated carrier. And then they complete the surrender form that's on the clipboard on top of the carrier. Once they're done with all that, they go back to their car and they leave. And then their instructions are to text me or call me when they're off the property, and I will immediately bring the kid in, so it's not sitting outside at night and subjected to whatever's out there. The entire process, 5 minutes maximum. Usually it's a real quick, they run up, they transfer the kitten, they sign their paper, and they leave. It's really a pretty simple process. Most of about this, first of all, I was never told it was through the night. She said that it was during the day. So I keep, as a nonprofit, I keep detailed records of every shift my volunteers take. I keep incoming donation logs of who donated what value, when they came. I have obviously surrender logs of who surrendered kittens, the time of day, the exact day. Transfer ins, other rescues that came, and I knew it wasn't somebody from another rescue because they've been to my place a million times. I knew it wasn't anybody, law enforcement, public service, because again, they use me a lot. They rely on me, they know where I am. So I was not told that it was at night. I was told it was during the day. And my first question to that was, why wasn't a police report filed? Like if somebody just walked in your home, I would have responded first by calling the police, not calling the zoning office. But that was my first concern.
Well, all I asked was, did you look into it?
I did.
Okay, and what
I
were you
found-
able to find out the answer?
I found actually two things. I checked all my logs in that she gave me a 1 week span when this complaint came in. So I went through all my logs and I ruled out anybody from animal control and law enforcement. I ruled them out. I knew it wasn't a volunteer because they knew, you know. They said that it was a man that entered the home holding kittens, is what I was told. But the only intakes I took in that 1 week span that weren't animal control or rescue transfer or law enforcement came from two private individual women. I had no intakes from men in that 1 week span. So I was really upset by this, so I called both those women and I basically said, hey, do you have any problems finding a facility, you know? Do you run into anything? And one woman had no issue, she came right here with no incident. The other woman told me that she was an older woman and she said she was about 45 minutes away and she wasn't too used to using her GPS. She was in an area, she had no idea where she was. She said she turned off an Eslories Road, made the left onto Overlook, and she stopped at the first house on the right. And she said she thought she was at the right place. She left the kittens in her car. She said she walked up to the door, she knocked on the door, and she asked if she was at Foxy's Cradle. She said that the woman that answered the door said it's up the road somewhere, slammed the door on her face, and she went back to the car, and she tried to figure out where she was.
Okay, so to the best of your knowledge, someone pulled in the wrong driveway,
Yeah.
and that's what happened. Okay.
That's the only account I could find that would even come close to anybody having an issue. I didn't come up with anything along the lines of what is supposedly happening.
But admittedly, it can happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I presume it's no different than you could have a friend or a delivery man that goes to the wrong.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, it's not a prevalent problem. You have to be aware that it's recurring. Is that
No.
correct?
No.
Okay.
ACCT Philly.
Okay.
It's spelled weird. That seems to work.
Okay, can you tell us what you do and then provide us with your relevant background for that position?
I'm the executive director of ACT Philly. We've taken about 15,000 animals as one of the largest open intake animal shelters. We are also responsible for kennel inspections in Philadelphia. And my background is also 11 years at the national animal welfare level, and that includes knowledge of just multiple nationwide and local animal welfare and rescue issues. And then we are a kennel, a licensed kennel by the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between the Foxy's Cradle operation and what would be commonly referred to as a kennel?
Sure. So, I mean, the biggest difference really is a kennel is for dogs, a cattery is for cats. Hence the different names. The other part is Foxy's Cradle is a rescue. And this is where I think, well intended, I think this is where it gets confusing, but there's shelters, like ACT Philly, we take in animals, we have a 33,000 square foot facility, we take in strays. There are hundreds, if not more, rescue organizations, which are nonprofit organizations. They operate out of people's homes. Very few of them are facility based. So that's where Foxy's Cradle would come in. They'd be considered a nonprofit, but not a nonprofit kennel, which is what we are, because to be a nonprofit kennel, you have to have dogs at the state level. I can't speak to it.
And in the instances like yours, are there typically adult animals that are part of the operation?
Yes, they're adult and neonates, which thankfully they often take. But we have about 300 animals in our care, and the majority of them are over the age of 4 months.
Okay. That's the only question I have.
You have any questions?
Briefly, you said when you're referring to a kennel, you're not referring to the local definition, you're referring to your common definition of kennel, is that correct?
To the Pennsylvania state law definition.
Okay.
Pennsylvania statewide?
Law.
And I think you said you can't speak to that, you meant you can't speak to the local definition of kennel.
I can speak to what I've read about it, but again, I'm not animal control here, you guys don't have animal control.
But your definition of kennel is not the one from the township's ordinance, it's the state definition.
It's the one that you go by to get the license, yeah, I mean, that's the only license.
From the state.
Mhm.
No further questions.
Just one follow-up. What's the difference between, in your mind, going into a kennel and going into like a neonatal rescue like Foxy's Cradle?
Yeah, be honest.
I'll recall her, she can sit down and I can recall someone. I mean, I don't think beyond the scope, it is only proceeding.
Yes, yes, what is my answer?
Basically, if you think of a hospital, go into a preemie ward versus going into a home with a toddler. You've got incubators set up, it's very small normally, but you're putting multiple animals that are babies that are smaller than my hand, in these incubators. Whereas like in our facility, when you walk in, you see actual kennels. You see kennels with cats in them, with dogs in them. We don't have kittens in incubators because, to the earlier point, we can't, even with overnight staffing, provide that kind of care.
That's all I have.
Any questions?
None.
I have a question. You guys said, you operate a kennel, or you're an executive operator of a kennel. What kind of licenses do you have for that?
So you're required, the Bureau of Dog Law Enforcement does state licensing of kennels. So in order to be a kennel, there's three types of kennels. There's nonprofit kennel, there's commercial kennel, and then there's private kennel, and boarding kennel, which is and boarding kennel. So it's boarding kennel, nonprofit kennel, commercial kennel, and private kennel. You have to be selling or adopting out above a certain number of animals. A nonprofit kennel has to have nonprofit status with the IRS and then operate as an animal shelter or a similar type facility. But the biggest factor is you have to be basically transferring out, selling, adopting out a certain number of dogs each year. They do not license anything related to cats. When they do their inspections, they have to do an annual inspection of any licensed kennel to make sure that we get that license renewed. So we have to meet certain criteria, but again, those criteria only pertain to the dogs.
And what type of facility would you say needs more attention and more care, a neonatal or a more traditional kennel?
It depends on how you define more attention, because again, like at our volume level, we obviously need more resources financially than caring for neonates, but if we had 15,000 neonates, that would require significantly more resources and care than 15,000 adults.
Okay, and last question, are you aware of any licenses that a neonatal facility would need by the state or?
I know of non-locally, state or national.
But you as a kennel are required to have a license?
For operating a dog, yeah, a dog kennel license, yes.
Where is your facility located?
It's in North Philadelphia.
And where?
North Philadelphia,
Address?
111 West Hunting Park Avenue.
Hey guys, it's Renee from Ratstash. So it is 10:30 at night. This meeting started at 6 p.m. I have not still not called to be a speaker, and they are still fighting it out. So we've lost a lot of people because it's 10:30 at night and it's a Monday night. First of all, I'm missing my Eagles. They're playing Monday Night Football, but cats are more important. But we've lost a lot of people, but the lawyers are still battling it out. So keep watching. Hopefully we get an answer tonight. But I think we have to get out of here by 11, so you better hurry up. Okay guys, so closing arguments on both sides just happened, and the Township Zoning Board just went in the back room to have a moment and figure out what's going to be the decision. So, hoping and praying that they allow this so that these kittens, future kittens, will survive and they'll be around. So, it's a very emotional day. It's also 10:11 p.m. at night. All right, let's cross our fingers. He's over there, they're having their little powwow. Right over there, they're having their little powwow. And as I told you before, there's a lot of people that left, but geez, there's a lot that stayed. So, really hope this works out. All right, I'll be back with the verdict. Okay, Dory, you hung out here with me all night. You're coming back. They're sitting here. We're gonna get the verdict. I feel like this is like the OJ trial. Like they're back with the verdict.
They better. Foxy's Cradle gotta win.
They better win.
That's all there is to it.
All right, let's flip it around because we're gonna hear it. Ooh, Todd, are you over there?
Well, I can't, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. We are back on the record. We had a brief executive session. The board is going to continue this hearing to our regular meeting on December 20th. All right.
We can't give you a date tonight about when the hearing will be, because we want to try and have it here again to accommodate everybody. So we will advertise. We need to know whether we can get this.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Ashcraft, as our procedures for this, we're to accommodate the, obviously the gallery. We're gonna have to see if this hall is available again for that day. If not, we will find an alternative place. We do have another hearing that night, so we have to make sure that the other applicant, unrelated matter, also understands the situation. Obviously, we'll try to get this because it accommodates a large amount of people, and we would advertise just like we did before, get it out on social media, send just as a normal advertisement, just mentioning public opinions. If we can't get this date at this hall, it might be a different date, either here or somewhere else. It's the best we can do.
To start all over again?
No.
The board needs to deliberate. The board is allowed to deliberate in executive session. That's a non-public meeting. Get a sense of where the board's at, but the board has to vote in public. What we would like to do would be, we would like it to be the 20th because that date is already scheduled for another applicant as well. But it's a factor of whether we can get this location or another sufficiently large location for the next public meeting.
Yes, and as you know, Attorney Ashcraft, we do have certain regulations that the Municipal Planning Commission states that we have to do, and we have certain deadlines that we have to keep to make our legal advertisement commitments. So we just can't just haphazardly say it'll be this day, that here or there, just because. So we have to do our certain postings and everything. So we'll try our best to get this date, this hall for that day. And the continuance would be the first hearing so that we can conclude this matter, so we can move on to the other matter that's not related.
We are adjourned.
You gotta be kidding me. We sat here for all those hours. We sat here for 5 hours. Dory,
Yes, Renee.
5 hours,
And no decisions.
no decision, and we have a continuance. 5 hours. So now we gotta wait. Now we have to wait until sometime in December, if they can get it in this year. If not, it's gonna be in January of next year.
Just to see them vote.
Just to see him vote. Just to see him vote.
Aye.
Aye. Just to see him vote.
This is so ridiculous.
I know, but it's kind of exciting. It's kind of exciting. This is our local government at work. So
Work and government. Oxymorons. Love y'all.
Mwah, mwah. Good night. I'm going. I need dinner.